Warm greetings. Welcome to Saturday Sailing of Grammar of a Lake, a podcast with a goal to understand urban lakes of India. I'm Akash, a curious youth who has often wondered about the life of lakes around us. In this series, I'll be speaking with Dr. Mansee Bal Bhargava, who has spent last 3 decades learning, loving, and living the urban lakes. In our conversation, we shall explore and experience our understanding about lakes since they are very much part of our everyday life, whether we realize it or not. Together, we shall co learn and co create how we make knowledge, appreciate, and celebrate the lakes that quietly shape our cities and our communities. So, without further ado, let's begin the conversation on lake algology. Dr. Mansi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Akash, thank you so much. Let's go to the minutest being of the lake.
All right. So, my first question is what do you mean by lake algology?
Yes, so first we need to understand the word algae, which I think many of us know. So when we talk about lake algology, we are talking about the presence of algae in the lake. And the study of algae is algology. And it is also called phycology. So the physical aspect of lake. And so algae is basically a single celled organism or kind of a, they live in colony or cluster, like we can relate it with seaweeds and other kind of things. But when we talk about algae in the lake, we have to understand the minutest green, blue green, beings which are most of the time floating on the lake, which are on the edge of the water body, which are on edge of other things which you put in the water body. Let's say you have a concrete structure, or the green sheet, blue green sheet that you see, they are algae, and their study is often almost non-existent in the study of lake. Their presence is completely unrecognized in the lake development and restoration, and it is extremely important that from naked eye we know who are algae, what do they do, why their presence or absence makes a difference in the lake, and that is what we are going to talk about today.
Yeah, so when I used to come across algae when I was a child, I would say, Kichi, let's stay away from that. I hope it
That's
is
how
not
we look at
consistent.
it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. All right. How is algology in the context of lakes misunderstood?
I think the biggest understanding, you already answered it, is the moment we see algae, we are like, gee, there is not so good things, on the lake. And in that process, it is again because the beauty of our conversation is we are trying to link it every time with human beings. I would like to start with giving an example. Few bad people in the society, does it make the society bad? Few terrorists, few gundas. No, they have to be identified as bad people, right? That's how we look at the society. Likewise, I think our understanding that all algae is bad needs to be demystified. That's a myth. And I am so keen to clear this up that all algae is not bad, and few bad algae does not make the entire lake bad, that you remove the good algae out of it. In short, there are good algae and bad algae in the lake, and it is important that they are discussed, they are analyzed before even thinking to remove all of it. Mind you, algae is the main food of the living organisms in the water body. The moment we imagine the lake to be clean water without algae, we are also depriving aquatic food to the aquatic beings, all kinds of insects, all kind of fish. So it's basically an aquatic food web, which is very useful to produce dissolved oxygen in the lake, very useful natural bioindicator, by its presence in the lake. So, what kind of algae we are talking about is unclear, and that is why we have developed a general ignorance about every algae is bad. And I think that's important to be discussed.
So there's good algae and there is bad algae. I
Yes.
remember some time back we used to get an ad of good gut bacteria and bad bacteria. So
Yes, we also
it,
learned it very recent, gut bacteria. Yes.
right. So how do we really differentiate, as in from naked eye? I'm sure I cannot tell that okay, this
No.
algae is bad, this is good.
You
So
cannot, even I cannot for that matter, but I am conscious. And that is what we are trying to do through this conversation series, to be honest, that we have to be conscious. You and I, through naked eye, we have some simple indicators to identify whether it is a good algae or bad algae. But importantly, acknowledging that there is good algae and bad algae is the first step, and that's why we are having this conversation today. So, a lake restoration or development project has to take into consideration the presence of algae in the lake. So there are common Indian, genres of good algae, chlorella, for example, spirogyra. So if I tell you these names to common people, it will make no, I will say, sense to them. These are green algae, hydrodictyl, green algae. We have diatoms, good diatoms, navicula, for example. But see, the point is not to showcase these names as something uh, that is everyone should know. The point is that all algae is not bad, and they need to be considered because it's just like bringing you to the nicest of the pub and gym or nicest restaurant and saying that we don't have food, and that is how we do with all the aquatic life when we remove algae from there, thinking that all algae is bad, whereas there are very few algae which are bad. And I'm not denying that there are bad algae, but I want to promote the good algae also. So there are indeed harmful algal blooms, which we know, which are very much present there. The microcitis category of uh, things which we see in many lakes, and they are actually coming because of the untreated sewerage or pesticide induced agricultural water, which gets irrigation water, which gets into the lakes and ponds. There are also more algal blooms or harmful algal blooms happening because of the climate change or temperature of the water rising, which is creating many, different kinds of emerging algae for that matter. And these harmful algal blooms are definitely doing a lot of harm because they are also more invasive and more progressive in their growth. They also reduce the growth of good algae. They create more so called dead zones or no food zone for the aquatic life. They release a lot of toxic, I will say, contents for the lake. They endanger the aquatic life. So we have to be concerned about bad algae. Now the thing is, I think considering every algae bad has been a big worry for me for a long, long time, and I am unable to convince people about it that we really need to be very careful when we talk about algae, because our understanding of lake as clear or transparent looking water itself is wrong, and that is coming out of this understanding that all algae is bad.
right, and you gave a very powerful example. Uh, Imagine there's a restaurant, you pack it with full of people, but there's no food. You tell them there's no food. Same is happening with the fishes and the other water organisms in the lake, which do not have algae.
Absolutely. See, Akash,
Uh,
we are doing this conversation, and I will, every session, I will try to link it with our lives because we are trying to find a different way to find a link between us and the lake. I mean, for me, actually, I am lake. I don't see myself different than a lake. And I have really spent time in my life to understand how we are not different from each other. The water that is flowing in you is flowing in me and also flowing in the lake. So then there is some analogy which we can draw, and probably that will help people enlighten themselves about things. So if a lake has algae, we have to know that it's not a bad algae all the time. Removing all the algae is the first step to start starving the aquatic life.
Yes, especially because they cannot go anywhere else.
They
It's a clear
cannot go and they
life.
cannot go to other place, or
We
and
can go to
also you very well, you put a very well point here. Also, because our understanding is that lake is a static water body, they cannot even flow, because earlier in the past they could flow from one lake to other through the natural drainage courses, which we will talk about in some time, the lake physiography. Now they cannot even go to find food in other lake because the interconnection between the lakes is lost.
right. Yes.
Hmm.
All right. And also, yes, they filter the water also. That was also something I learned. Coming to my next question, what challenges come in the way of acknowledging lake archaeology?
The challenge is where algology science is developed is completely disconnected with the development of lake organizations. So, see, there are not many algologists in the country. First of all, we don't know, most of us, not me, but I also learned it very late in life. But the fact that there are algologists. I know many scientists in CSIR, which is a government institution across the country. There are very well known algologists who have dedicated their life studying algae, good and bad both. There are many toxicologists, for that matter, who are also studying algae. So algae is basically organic compound in the water system, which we consider while we study lake pollution. Likewise, we also study toxicology to study the chemical, pollution in the lake. So I think the fact that there are people to work on it, there are people who have found out of it, there are new algae which are, like, you can say, GM algae for that matter, which have been produced by scientists, which can help the lakes, duckweed, for example, which can help the lakes to self clean. So, nature based solutions also are there. Oh, this is a nice inclusion in the session. That's so nice.
Yeah,
Just show the
nice
face, show the
guy.
face. Hello, hello. Hi, Katie. Hi, Katie. Nice. This is nice. So, yeah, so coming back to the thing is that our acknowledgement is not coming out because the science is not well known. See, when we talked about limnology, we also know that not many people talk about limnology directly. We had our first institute of limnology in Bhopal first time, but algology is actually taught indirectly in all of the biology courses, directly also in botany for that matter. However, we still don't come out to see in everyday life someone calling themselves algologist, because most of them are hardcore scientists working very hard, producing a lot of science and papers and very important inventions. The disconnect of their work with the mainstream people who are actually involved in lake is the problem, you know. So there is lack of communication between the two strong fields, one who is studying and one who is practicing lake. By practicing, I mean those who are really getting into the lake and doing something about it, you know. So there is a complete disconnect. And how will then we have so every lake, when their health is being tested, the algae is also being tested. But having said that, we don't take into consideration both the good algae and bad algae percentage, and then decide what to remove, what not to remove, how to remove. All these things will come into picture only when people who are directly involved with the lakes will know that algae are of both types, and that algae is one of the main food. If you are a vegetarian and you say there is no sabji in the market, how will you survive? It's as simple as that. So I need to know as a lake developer or lake engineer or lake officer or commissioner or whatever, that we need food for the fish. So now we feed the fishes, and I mean, of course, there are a lot of insects also which are consumed, but you cannot divide the aquatic life from their basic food. Imagine you not eating what you have been eating from childhood, and from tomorrow you are fed with something else. You are going to change in your health and everything, and probably you will not like it, and you may not survive it also after some time. So we see a lot of these issues when the good algae are completely removed from the lakes.
Right. Those are again some striking examples which really make me think. Um, all right, coming to my last question,
Hmm.
how can we improve our understanding about the algology of lake, and what would be a solution to course correct?
I think the course correction, I will start with the second question. Is the course correction has to be that the word algae has to appear in policy documents in all lake projects. It is not there. It is absolutely missing from lake projects. And what we can do is, I mean, see, I am very open about collaborative process to any project. I don't believe that an engineer or an architect or a designer, urban designer or a planner, has the capability to take care of the lake. Unless and until we are having hydrologist, limnologist, algologist, or a botanist, ichthyologist, ornithologist, to me, actually, they are the real parents of the lake. And unfortunately, they are completely missing out of the whole scenario of lake development and restoration projects. Even lake conservation projects are not having them many a times. Taking their consultation for one or two times with a petty fee to them is not enough. Just the way an engineer is overlooking a lake over years or over time in an organization from local authorities, we need botanists to be there to take care of algae, to take care of aquatic life. We need geologists to be there. We need algologists. Let's say we are not able to find algologist and specified algologist or who is practicing, because this is also not a very lucrative profession to practice independently. So we have only specialized scientists, but we do have hydrologists, we do have limnologists who have also studied algae, we do have botanists, we do have hydrologists. Why are they not part of the lake projects? See, maybe I am actually talking against my own profession and reducing my scope of work, which is a serious issue in architecture also. But I believe in collaborative approach, and the fact that if I am not capable of taking care of algae, I should better have somebody to take care of the algae in the project. But are we willing to share our profit margins? That's a big question mark which comes into all lake. See, all lake development and restoration projects have unfortunately have become like a construction project, because you have to understand, the more concrete, more brick, more steel, and more benches and more lights means more commissions. Growing more algae will not give any commission to anybody, and that is where the problem starts, that we are unwilling to consider it as integral part of the lake. I don't think a lake is only about water, which we will talk about time and again. It's about life. And I don't think life can survive without food. Why do we want to push our fishes to be on a hunger, I will say marathon, or make them starve without their food, and then you feed them food what you think, if factory generated food you give them? Why, when we can have a natural source of food for them? It's just like the way we are eating all GM food, and we have completely forgotten our organic food. We want to do the same with the lakes. So, course correction to me is really a difficult task to do for the kind of psyche we have. But at least the first step has to be that at least it is taught, it is there in education. It's just that how policy can make sure that there are people from that background, from botany, from zoology, from ichthyology, ornithology, or hydrology, limnology, they are on board. You may not have all of them all the time, but do not discount their importance in the project, because you and I cannot ensure algae to be present, because algae can be grown also just the way bad algae grows with the pollutants. When we have sewage flowing into it, when we have nitrogen phosphorus increase in the water, we also have the possibility to grow good algae, you know. And mind you, good algae also means that if we can help produce more good algae, we are also trying to clean the water, we are also trying to make life of the water body healthier, we are also trying to ensure that they are eating up the pollution, you know. So I think it's a win-win situation if we just think about it. Is just that we have to think differently and not look at all green on the lake as that it is bad. There are some simple tips to understand that what is bad algae or what is good algae, and that needs to be understood. And there is a very simple way to look at. For example, you can actually make out from the pattern of the algae whether it is good algae or bad algae. If there is oil floating on the algae, the color hue of the algae, or there are simple indicators for layperson like you and me to understand good algae and bad algae. But let us not get into those nuances of the scientific details. But at least if government officers and architects, planners, and civil engineers can acknowledge the fact that all green is not bad on the lake, and that we should not aim for a crystal clear looking water, because the color, which we will also talk at some point in time, the color of the water is not dependent, and we cannot regulate or control the color of the water. Color of the water is dependent on many factors, from the soil, from the sunlight, from the algae, from the movement of the water, from the color of the sky. All these are the things which will affect. So why to make algae the villain of the lake? Algae are not the villain of the lake, they are the friends of the lake. But yes, we need to be able to identify good and bad algae. And there are a lot of scientific names, but I don't want to bore you with all the scientific names. I just gave you few names. I will stop here.
Now, that's a very interesting point that you have made, that water bodies, lakes, or any water body for that matter, and when we have the conservation projects or restoration projects, we need to be more inclusive. We need to get the scientific minds, archaeologists,
Absolutely.
ethologists, uh, hydrologists, etc. I think there are many more names which I have heard from you, but
Toxicologist. I know a wonderful toxicologist in the country, and she has done some serious contribution to science. And she's working on the ground as well. I mean, we have good toxic who also work on algology, by the way. So people coming from chemistry and biology background are completely missing in lake projects, and that's my
right.
point.
And we need to bring them in the forefront, in the
Absolutely.
mainstream, I would say.
Yes.
Uh,
We can only do that if we consider lake has a life. As long as we will
right,
continue to consider lake as an infrastructure, and we need to clean the water as crystal clear water like a swimming pool, there is a problem.
right.
We have to really tune ourselves to the point that lake has a life just like you and me.
So I've been trained as an architect.
Hmm.
Uh, I wonder if any specialization masters could there be, which would teach me that, okay, if you have to restore a lake, this is the degree, and you'll have to study about all these specializations, so that when you're designing, you are very mindful that you give them space and you take inputs from them, and based on their inputs, you design a lake restoration projects. Do we
Absolutely.
have such a course?
Oh, that's a very good point, and you touched the chord of, I will say, for the chord that I have been fighting for more than 20 years now. We don't have many institutions that is teaching about rivers and lake. Please listen carefully at this moment now. In a country that is run by water systems where we revere them as and respect them as god and goddesses, we are not teaching those good things. We do not have masters in lake management or bachelors in lake management, masters in river management, bachelors in river management. We do not have enough courses also on water. So in we do have one or two, like we have lake course in Dehradun, by the way, on lake management. We also have National Institute of Hydrology, one in again Dehradun, one in Pune, but not enough that people will come to know. And the fact that these courses are not generating employment, and these are very few courses, we have barely, we can count in fingers how many water courses are there in the country. When you get a degree on bachelor's and master's in water management, it's not even in double digit, by the way. And I'm also fighting this battle for more than 20 years that water needs to be taught. Let's imagine one single river. I'm not even talking about many rivers. Ganga. We don't have a course on Ganga. Even if we call it Ma, we want to save it as a national river. Then I think we should have a course on masters in Ganga management. If it is an important feature which feeds
Very
40%,
interesting.
40% of the population of this country, then it should be taught, but we are not teaching. So we do not have course on lake management, whereas people like me, we are struggling to teach course. I have course designed from 1 day to 1 year, and I am not surprised that I struggle to find takers for these kind of courses in institutes. I have probably, I am one of those successful, or I am one of those lucky people who have run few courses. Not successful, but lucky people who have managed to run these courses. And also the tapasya I have been doing for 30 years to learn about lakes, but it is just because of my personal conviction that we need to study lakes in a different way than we have been studying. I have not been taught about lakes in architecture and planning and urban design. I have all the three degrees. I've never taught there, and whatever I have learned through those courses have actually forced me, because of my personal rebellion nature, to learn something more, because they did not teach what is the right thing to be taught. So we don't have to answer you in nutshell then. And I wish I would like to live that day in my life when we are actually teaching about rivers and lakes and not hiding them behind development as an education which we have. Uh, and still in India, we still do not have water education, water management. It is not a successful education which is still there. None of the IITs, none of the IIMs have a course called water, a course called river, a course called lake. So you can imagine, if IITs and IIMs do not acknowledge the existence of these ecosystems, we are still far. At least in that sense, forest is more lucky, is luckier than water, luckier than rivers and lakes and wetlands. We at least have forest education. We have Indian Institute of Forest Management. Where is Indian Institute of Water Management? Where is Indian Institute of River Management? Where is Indian Institute of Lake Management? We don't have them. Not that forest is doing good in the country, but at least there is a basic education in some institutions. Water is far from it. And unfortunately, the water crisis in the country is also the water education crisis. I think we can have a different discussion altogether on this topic, which is very
Right,
important, close to my heart.
right. All right. So I think it's time I wrap up the session. To our viewers, in case there are questions or comments, we are happy to hear from you. You may find Grammar for Lake session on our YouTube channel, V for Water, and on our website, www.w4w.org, along with many conversations dedicated to water, since we believe water conversations are way towards water conservation. Stay tuned. See you again on Saturday Sailing. Take care and thank you for listening. Thank you, Dr. Mansi, for your time.
Thank you so much, Akash. Take care. See you soon.